Hey, good morning. I'm Jeremy. Yesterday I worked on the wiring in the van, the tail lights, and rerouting the wire into the walls and all that fun stuff. Today we're gonna do some metal work, some welding, some floor repair, and start installing that Chinese diesel heater that I got. So come along, let's see what we got in the garage today. Thank you very much. So I got my metal plate here that I cut. It's going to cover over my hole from my fuel pump replacement. And on this side I used 2 coats of high gloss trim-clad paint, just a spray can, and it came out really nice. It looks like the finish of an appliance or something like that. On the inside I just put 1 coat, and I'll spray the whole thing down once I've got it all in place. But I'm going to clean up the edges and run a bead of silicone all the way around, and then run some 3/4 inch self-tapper screws down through each little pocket in the floor. And there we go. We have a sealed hole. Now I can put my flooring over top of it and not worry about falling through. I removed my Chinese heater here from its really weird location that I put it before. I put it in a hurry. Made this little shelf. This is just temporary. I'm going to reinforce it and all that. That's why it's a little bit flexible. But it's just so I can have it temporarily in, so I can figure out where this is going to go. Marked out some holes already. I'm trying to keep about an 8-inch gap in the back for the air intake, and then my vent, I want it to go over top of the wheel well, and then it's going to come out into a cabinet on the other side. So I think this will be a good spot, good height. Once I get it in, this should bend up and over, no problem. And we're going to drill some holes. For the layout of the holes, comes out with a little template that's actually meant to go on the bottom side. I've butchered it just to get it to fit into the last spot, but I'm going to make another one out of this same steel, which is the same steel they gave me. But I figured out approximately where I wanted it. I already used my Sharpie and marked out some circles on there. I just got to bring them all out. The bottom sides of these holes are still fairly rough. So as you can see, I gotta cut off these because those are gonna hurt. Or not cut off, but grind off. Gonna do a test fit. Let's see if we can get these nuts in. All my holes line up. Seems to be okay. Once this is stretched out and bent, that's going to fit in there pretty good, I believe. And then I got to run on my wiring. This is going to have an extension pipe coming straight down into the floor where my exhaust is going to go. And then the air, like, I'll have a sealed exhaust down through the floor with the exhaust pipe and little muffler that they send with it. And then the air intake will come up as well. So this black one is our air intake from the outside, and this one is a rigid hard metal pipe that is our exhaust. So those are going to be going in here like that. And what my plan is since this is supposed to be fully outside the vehicle, this plate usually is the bottom of the vehicle. I'm going to put a piece of solid pipe with a plate at the top and at the bottom to mount it in place. That'll give this a little bit of support, but it will also seal it up. I'm going to put silicone on both ends, make sure it's sealed. The air inlet's not as important, but I will seal right around the bottom edge just so none of the exhaust comes back up in. And then our exhaust port on the back has plenty of clearance. This is all going to be inside a wall, so there will be nothing that could possibly get sucked in. So for underneath the heater in the back for the exhaust pipe, that's going to be elevated up, and as a support, I built this where it's 2 inches by 2 inches. I've already bent it on my metal brake, my very inexpensive metal brake that I could have made a better one. Anyway, I bent the tube And then I bent these with a pair of flat vice grips. These guys, I just bent each side of it, and then it put a little crimp in it, and then it bent over no problem. I had to cut a couple of the flanges off, top and bottom, 2 at the bottom, so that it doesn't hit the wheel well, and so it doesn't hit the air inlet pipe. And at the top I had to cut one off so it doesn't hit the air inlet pipe. But right now I went out and bought a new roll of MIG wire and some new tips, and I gotta clamp this all together and weld the seam up. So I got my piece all clamped up so that my edges are all nice and square. I know it's a whole bunch of clamps, but it's what I needed to get this nice seam. I'll just do some tack welds and then come back and take all the clamps off and then stitch up the whole seam. This is what it looks like with all the clamps. This is the seam that I'm talking about. I just wanted to make sure it was all nice and even. I'll probably put a tack weld in each corner and one above each clamp. And then when I take off the clamps, I can just stitch weld the whole seam up. All I'm using is my little Lincoln Electric MIG welder. It's nothing fancy, it's just a Lincoln Electric Procore 100. I use gasless wire on it, so it's got the flux inside and I don't need to run any gas with it. We have an oxy-acetylene torch on the back, so I have that there instead of my gas bottle for my MIG welder. And it costs a lot more for the MIG wire, but I don't have the hassle of another bottle and getting it refilled and everything like that, so I like it. So I got my little tack welds, and now I just have to do that whole seam. You should never need to use the wrench. The only reason you have a wrench is when the wheel binds and gets jammed in there. All you need to do is hold your button in, tighten it by hand until it stops turning. You don't need a reef on it, and it's good to go. Plug her back in. And that's what happens when the GoPro goes for a tumble. So we got our piece. Welded up the seam all the way along. No bubbles or anything like that. Didn't have to go back a second time. Got a little bit of splatter on there, but I'm not too worried about it. So now I got my nice little square tube. Square-ish. It's a little off square, but it's going to do the job. Again, like I say, my metal brake isn't wonderful. It was a cheap $30 Princess Auto one, and definitely wouldn't suggest buying that at all. Just make one. They're pretty simple to make out of some 1/4-inch angle iron, and I just wanted to be quick, and I'll make another one. But for the time being, my oblonged tube for my my exhaust vent is welded up. So now we gotta fit it and see how that goes. Well, I did my first ever startup of this. I probably should have did it a little bit earlier, but I've got it in. I've got my exhaust and air going in there. Got my fuel pump at the back. I rerouted it through the door spring, and I mounted my fuel tank there. I left the bolts long because I'm not sure how I'm going to finish the doors yet, so I left that. And I have it down in, and I have it shutting down. I still have a little bit of air coming through. At first, when the fuel pump was going, priming the system, it was really loud. I wish I would have recorded that. As it's going, it's cooling down. The pump has to, or the system has to cool itself down, but I had it up to 35 degrees, no problem. The little heat sensors on the bottom, that little hole right here, and I just had this sitting in front of the hose, and it started going over 35, but I think that's because it was directly in line with the sensor. As soon as you line it up like that, it just starts climbing up again. So let's see, yeah, easily get at full power, you easily get 35 degrees. So I'll be interested to see how warm and how quickly this heats up the van, but by the sounds of it, or by the looks of it, pretty quick.